live. Yay. Hello, everybody. This is Misha Safran. I am so excited to be interviewing Kathryn Blume today. This is my podcast. It is number 33, Coexistence, Joy, Pain, and Truth of It All. We had a great guest last week, John Fuller. Today is Kathryn Blume. Next week, we have another guest, totally exciting. And so I'm going to be introducing you to Kathryn in just a moment, but I'm going to ask you all to kind of think about, those of you who are listening, watching, how do you define being joyful? What does being joyful mean to you? And while you're all thinking about that answer, feel free to post it in the comments if you're watching on YouTube or on Facebook or in my private group. We're in 3 different places at once. Can you believe that, Kathryn? We're like, it's pretty amazing technology. They always said you can't be in 2 states at once or 3 states at once, but you can. You really can. Especially if you're talking about states of being, right? Because this whole notion of joy and pain, we can be in both of those states of being at the same time. So yeah, if you're listening, if you're watching, please just feel free to respond to the questions in the chat. How do you define being joyful? And so I'm going to introduce you to Kathryn Blume. And Kathryn is a musician, speaker, performer, writer, educator, and passionate advocate for creative, justice-infused, world-saving action. She was the co-founder and executive director of the award-winning climate and sustainability game Vermontivate. Is that how you say it?
Yeah, very good. Most people don't get it on the first try.
Cool. Well, I have to be honest. I had a few tries before that one, but I didn't get to check in with you. And this game, so she also founded the environmental news radio show Earth on the Air, co-founded the Lysistrata Project? Lysistrata, see, okay. Yep. The first world theatrical event for peace, and is the author of Dancing to the Beat of the Great, Green Heart, a collection of essays and speeches on building a climate movement of hope and power. Woo! Okay, take a deep breath. That is really cool, all of that. And for those of you who are watching and listening, I did put that bio in the post itself, so you can reread it at your leisure. So Kathryn also served as board chair of the Climate Action Group 350 Vermont, and has given speeches, taught workshops, and toured her one-woman shows in over 60 cities in the US, Canada, UK, and Europe. A yogini with a 30-plus year practice, Kathryn received her BA from Yale with a self-designed degree in environmental studies and theater, and is also an ordained minister with the Universal Life Church. Wow. Hi, Kathryn.
Hello.
So how are you today?
Pretty good, actually. For being midwinter, mid-pandemic. I'm in Vermont, and it is snowing today. Yes. We had a tease of spring, and now we're back in crazy town. But hopefully, this won't last too long.
We got a full night of snow last night, and it's finally starting to melt. I see it on the rooftops over there, but it's I'm in Pennsylvania, and we had some snow too, and it was beautiful. And now it's beautiful again with blue skies. I'm very happy for the blue skies.
Well, we usually get your weather later, so hopefully that's what we're looking forward to tomorrow.
So how do you define for you being joyful?
That is a really good question, and I feel like I should preface my answer with acknowledgement that everything that I've done and any way that I experience joy in the world comes from a position of incredible privilege, and there are things that are very easy for me to say and do that are not easy for other people to say and do. And I want to be very transparent about that, because this is a moment in our cultural history where we're starting to understand that more clearly. And I feel like it's important to call, much like I should have mentioned, I'm in Vermont, is the traditional home of the Abenaki people.
Thank you.
The winds of justice and injustice both blow hard, and I feel like it's incumbent upon all of us to acknowledge all of those things. So all of that said, and in particular my own privilege very clearly acknowledged, I would say I define joy as sort of being that's about being in the moment, And then there's also a piece of it about tapping into the it's sort of the everyday beauty of the moment as well. It's like you can find, you can be touched by this, like the smoothness of my desktop, or the softness of my dress, or the colors. You can be wowed by almost anything. And I remember reading a story about a woman with polio and was living life in an iron lung. But for her, joy was just being wheeled over to an open window and feeling the breeze on her face. And I think we can tap into almost any moment with, I think, awareness and mindfulness. And you hear stories of people in incredibly difficult straits who are able still to ground themselves in whatever their experiences, and may very well be, in the midst of whatever horror they're in, be able to just say, there's a bird flying by, or there's a breeze on my face. And so I think joy is so much of how we define and capture and live our lives on a moment-to-moment basis. Because all those like visions and dreams, we don't actually have a lot of control over whether or not, so we kind of have to take it as.
Yeah, absolutely. It's interesting when you were talking about the bird, or this weekend, it was really windy here. And I was a little nervous because we have a lot of trees in our backyard. And I'm like, there's that fear that they're going to fall over this way. And at the same moment, I had that moment of fear. A leaf literally came up to the window, hovered there for a minute, and then flipped away. And I was like in awe and totally forgot about my fear. But they were there in the same moment. And yet I was so enamored by this leaf giving me some attention and me giving it some attention. I would just go back just a moment, because I did forget to say to my audience, I've been trying really hard to acknowledge and do this, but that all land is Indigenous land. And I encourage everyone to have that reminder. I also want to tell everyone that in my podcast, in my business, you are all valued, heard, accepted, and welcome here. Races, genders, cultures, abilities, and sexual orientations. So just want to make that real clear and put that out there, because I meant to do it at the beginning, and I was so excited to meet you. I totally forgot. So so go ahead, keep going. Yeah. So when you're in your path, in your lifetime, have you felt like you've always, have you been more of a joyful person, or have you had to work hard for it?
Both. I think there's a baseline to my core self, which is pretty joyful, but I think I've also been very easily knocked off that path by whatever's going on in here. And whether it's a bad breakup and that kind of sucks joy from your life, or I spent a lot of years pursuing a professional actor. And that was challenging, because you get into it, most of us, I think, because you come up as a kid and you're in school plays and you're in shows in college, and it's fun and sexy, and you get to touch people way sooner than you would have ordinarily, and all that's wonderful. And the play of being in a show. And then you get out into the business, which is not like that at all. And it's all about status, job, you have an agent, whether or not you're all of that kind of stuff, which for me really sucked the joy out of it almost altogether. And having to do scripts where I thought the writing was terrible, or work with a director whose style I didn't agree with. And as an actor, you don't have a lot of power, which is in part why I started writing and performing solo shows, because I was not ever considered all that castable by the industry. I was considered very quirky. In life, a great thing, but when they're typecasting and they're looking for very standard types of individuals, that was really frustrating. And I don't think it's easy for anybody. And if you're gorgeous, you have to stay gorgeous. And if you have to stay young, and nobody can do that. So So to be writing and performing my own stuff made me feel like I had an enormous amount of control over my work, and no one could ever tell me I was wrong for my own show. Like playing 24 different characters, nobody was wrong for any of them. So that was a lot. And I think as I have gone forward in my life, I've really been trying to follow where I've been compelled to engage and try to make the world a better place, but also what's the most fun. And I'm in the land of Ben and Jerry's, and they always talk about if it's not fun, why do it? And not everybody can have fun, and some people are in positions of really needing to grind it out because of their circumstances. But if it's possible to find pleasure and joy where you are, sometimes it's easier than others. It's worth a shot, because our lives are quite precious.
Absolutely. So how would you say currently today that you access joy?
Music, for sure. You can see in the background, I have a studio space where I get to play. I live in the woods in Vermont. I have a wonderful husband, a cat, and a river. And, all through the pandemic, I've been just flushed with gratitude for the beauty and the work that I get to do. And but the pandemic for me was an interesting, I felt like I was already in training for lockdown, because 5 years ago, my appendix exploded and I ended up in the hospital with sepsis. And it was a very dramatic situation and a long road of recovery. And there was a lot of time sitting on the couch, just waiting for tissues to recongeal and healing to happen, and process you can rush. And so a lot of my joy was staring out the window and watching the light change and watching the seasons roll forward. I, quite frankly, also have access, because I live in the woods and I'm a gardener, to a great deal of cannabis, which also helped a lot through all of that. So joy comes in many different forms. Sometimes we need to pursue it either more actively or consciously, but I'm in a position in my life where it's not so hard to come by, which is phenomenal.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I think I'm going to sneeze.
Okay.
Hold on. All right, I'm good. That usually gives people a lot of joy, because apparently I have a cute sneeze. So, but it didn't happen. No.
Remember what Dr. Ruth used to say? She's like, an orgasm is a reflex, just like a sneeze, which always makes sneezes very different.
I don't remember ever hearing that, but that's good to know. So maybe when I sneeze, I'm having an orgasm? Wait a minute. No, I'm just kidding. Hey. No.
It's released for sure.
That's great. So I would love to know, I'm really, just thinking back to your appendix. My youngest son, he had a rupture and he was very ill, and we had no idea. He didn't even tell us. He just, like 10 days later, he's like, Mom, is it really weird that I can't stand up straight without pain? I'm like, yeah. And and that's when I found out. He's like, it went like 10 days ago, I was throwing up a lot, and I don't know. Oh my God. He was lucky. He was really lucky, because his body actually created a sac to hold all the toxins. And then, that sac was, I don't know, whatever that sac was doing got infected, I think. And so that's what got him to be uncomfortable again. And we took him in. He was very fortunate. His body reacted in a way that totally protected him. So talk about, pain and joy at the same time. Like, how scary. And oh my God, I'm glad he's okay. But, we have all of us. Well, I'm going to go back just a little bit. I want to really acknowledge this place of privilege that you honestly brought forth, because not a lot of people are willing to admit that. And it's interesting. My partner and I do a webinar, a monthly webinar. It's free. And it's called A Candid Conversation About Systemic Racism. And every month we have new BIPOC members that come and join us to talk about systemic racism and their experiences. And, there's so much that I want to say, I understand, but that's the wrong language. I don't understand, and the song that I just recently submitted for a page, we have experiences, And even as two white women, and I actually haven't always referred to myself as white. I'm Jewish, and I'm a lesbian. I've got other things, but so at the same time, my skin hasn't always. I have had things happen as a result of the way I look, especially after 9/11. And so, but even so, you can tell me that you had an experience, and I wouldn't know from your perspective what that was like. And for any of us, when somebody's in pain, when somebody's even excited and in joy, we can have sorrow with them, but we won't have the same sorrow. We can have joy and celebration with them, but it won't be the same joy and celebration. And so one of the things that I work with my clients on, and I like to talk to my podcast guests about, is what do you do to move through and balance these feelings that come across for you and experiences? Like a lot of people have told me that they're afraid to feel joy because they don't know when the other shoe is going to drop. And my question is, well, then why couldn't we then say, I'm afraid to feel pain because I don't know when the other shoe is going to drop? Like it doesn't make sense, right? It just doesn't make sense. So I don't know. I'm going to stop there and let you talk.
I think there's that we're afraid to seem like a fool or to be duped somehow. And so it's like you enter a new relationship and you go in a little bit jaded and making all kinds of predictions. And it's that voice in your head that wants to keep you safe by warning you that maybe this is still not going to, whatever, it's not going to work, or not be telling you the truth, because no one wants to be taken for a fool, or however they might be. But we're always, I think, trying to avoid pain. And if you can acknowledge the fact that pain is inevitable, it's like I've met many artists in my life who were afraid of going to therapy because they thought, if I conquer my demon and I get happy and healthy, then my creative juices will dry up. And my feeling about that is life is just set up to break your heart. It's going to happen. We're all going to get older. We're all going to lose our capacities, and everyone we know is going to die. The world is going to stop being a familiar place one way or another, either culturally or environmentally. All those things are guaranteed to happen.
Yep.
So if loss is inevitable, and having our hearts broken is inevitable, and having compassion for people who are suffering is inevitable, then we might as well embrace the joy that we've got. And if someone's making you feel good, you can doubt them, or you can say, all right, I appreciate how I feel in this moment. I'm not 100% sure that this relationship will continue, or, whatever. You can be conscious of reality while still embracing the positivity of your experience.
Absolutely.
And I think that's a practice. It's a muscle, and we can, it gets easier if you feel like I have nothing to hide and I have nothing to fear. And so I will be hurt. I will make mistakes. I will fail at things, but that's just inevitable. So I don't have to worry about it too much. And I think to the whole question of the conversations about race and justice that we're collectively getting into more and more, I know there's all of the issues around white fragility. And there was a part of me, particularly last summer, as the conversation was really revving up, and we were learning more and more. I was mostly just grateful, honestly, and kind of excited, because there's so much that I'd been aware so long, but had my own responsibility, had not connected all the dots. And as those dots were connected, as more history was being laid out, things started making more sense. And so there's a part of me that felt like, okay, I'm going to make mistakes in this, say the wrong thing. I'm going to cause harm, but I'm also completely willing to apologize and move on from it and not take it too personally, because we're kind of set up, like I said, we're set up to fail one way or another. So you fail, you learn, and as Samuel Beckett says, you fail better next time, and you move on, and it doesn't have to be about you, which is a great way of approaching it, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think that, when I can remind myself also that, yeah, sure, joy is temporary, but pain can be temporary too. Sorrow can be temporary. And if I just remember that, then it's like, well, can't I, then let me just move through them. Let me not just like try to sit in the ugly and, you know, and crave the beauty. Like just pass through each one and let them happen. I find that I do a lot better with life.
Yeah. I had to have, as a follow-up to the appendix situation, had to have hernia surgery in this past December because the surgical scar had herniated. And so going into it, knowing that this is going to suck and it's going to be painful, but it was great to be able to say, all right, I understand the ground rules here. The surgical team tells me this is going to be painful, but in 3 to 6 months, it won't be. And I know how to take care of myself through this, and I know how to have perspective. This too shall pass. And I think that's one of the benefits, actually, as you get older, you've experienced a lot and you're side of it. And to look at a particularly painful period that might have overwhelmed you at the time, but happened 5 or 10 years ago or 20 years ago, you realize, oh, you have that telescoping perspective of time, which changes, I think, how you approach things.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Can you tell us a little bit about your collection of essays? It was called the Dancing to the Beat of the Great Green Heart.
Great Green Heart, yeah.
Yeah.
There was a period of time where I was most actively involved in the climate movement. And I did a lot of public speaking around climate and sustainability. I was a commentator on Vermont Public Radio. I, curiously enough, would often get hired to come in and talk to a group or an organization. And because I was not an expert in anything in particular, I mean, like I talked about climate and sustainability a lot, but because I came out of the way that I was entertaining. And so they would say, all right, we want you, because we know you're going to show us a good time, but we want you to talk about X, Y, and Z. We want you to approach it. And so I did a lot of customized talks rather than boilerplate talks for a lot of different groups. And I realized I went through a big life transition, and I thought, all right, where I want to be headed now is public speaker. And I knew that public speakers needed books to help market themselves. So I did everything, all the essays and speeches and stuff that I'd done and into one collection. And that's where that came. Yeah.
Is there one writing in particular that if somebody were to pick up that book today that you would say, oh yes, read that one?
That's a really great question. I put the book together a while ago and I'm trying to remember what was in it.
Well, everybody listening and watching, I put her on the spot. I don't ever prepare I never prepare my guests for the questions because I like it to be really comfortable and casual and just kind of, you know, so if you don't remember and don't have it, it's all good.
I don't have a copy of that book anymore. I would say actually, so what I will do is throw it back in the reader's lap and they can open it up to whatever page and point and see what's going on, because there were a lot of themes that I did sort of repeat. And a lot of what I was saying was talking about the challenge of recognizing that we are in a great global crisis, very uncertain future. And how do we respond to that? And there's a beautiful phrase, a word called nostalgia that was coined by an Australian psychotherapist named Glenn Albrecht. And it means the kind of nostalgia that you feel for the place where you are because that place is changing underneath your feet, which is, I think, a lot of what people are going through.
Yeah. Can you say the phrase again? Because you cut out a minute. So what was the phrase again?
Solastalgia.
Soul nostalgia?
Solastalgia. S-O-L. I remember how to spell it. Solastalgia. So it might be S-O-L-I-S-T-A-G-I-A, I believe. Solastalgia. And, you know, Misha, I love that you're a joy and a resilient.
I think that's the word, right? Solastalgia.
Nice to look it up. At any rate, close enough. Glenn Albrecht is the guy's name. And I love that you're a resilience coach, because a lot of the climate movement talks a lot about resilience, because we know that there are going to be impacts, environmental, social, economic. And the question is, how do we as individuals and as communities increase our resilience to whatever those impacts are? be and not let our social fabric break down.
Yeah.
That's the kind of stuff I talked about a lot in all of the various contexts of my engaging with this.
Yeah. I appreciate your work. I really do. And, I know that we also met because we're both singer-songwriters. And I don't know if would you like to play anything for the guests? It's kind of, I know this is last, or
God,
maybe not.
I'd have to tune up and deal. I don't want to take time.
Well, maybe we'll have you come back. Yeah. No problem. Yeah, I know John. When I asked John Fuller, he's like, yeah, okay. And his piano was literally right in front of him. The way he had his, I was like, oh, awesome, great. So I just wanted to put that out there just in case there was a desire, because I didn't ask you ahead of time. So very
if
cool.
I prepped, I'd do it. We can do it some other time.
Yeah. What kind of music do you write? What kind of if somebody were to say, like, what's your style? Who impacted you?
As for lyrics, of course, it's always Joni Mitchell, right? And Paul Simon, who people I just admire enormously. Dar Williams also is just a phenomenal scholar who I've been following for decades, and was so grateful to finally meet her after having listened. And we know people in common. And it's funny, when the first time I heard her first album, my first thought was, okay, we didn't go to school together because I would have known her, but she had to have gone somewhere nearby. And it turns out she did. And people that she knew in college, I worked with in theater, I knew who I sang with in college, she ended up. So there's all these crossovers, which I haven't even told her about yet because I'm like a fan.
Did you go to any of her retreats?
Not in person. I heard about them for the first time last spring. And so I did her retreat last August.
Oh,
and then I signed up for the retreat in December, but I was just out of the hospital and not really capable of dealing with anything. So
what? You couldn't do all of it at the same time?
Kathryn caught me from focusing. But I intend to do it again, and I can't wait to do it in person. I think that would be just magnificent. And
yeah, it is. Yeah,
that
I went 2 years ago, and it was amazing. It was amazing. Yeah, and I hope to go again in person for sure. So, well, we are coming down to the wire. If you were to tell people your favorite thing to do to access joy, what might that be?
Honestly, smoke a bowl and pick up my guitar and play some music late at night. That's just a fast track.
That's an answer. There you
go. Generally, as some form of sensual pleasure definitely gets me in the zone. Much trouble.
There you go.
Chocolate.
It's funny. I totally did not expect that answer. And so I had to kind of have it land for a moment and go, and then I just realized, oh, that works for a lot of people. That's great. That's great. Well, thank you so much for being my guest today. And I'm really, I'm just really grateful to have met you. And do you have anything that you want people to be able to support you? Is there the website, or do you want people to share about you? Is there anything I can?
Well, honestly, I'm still in the work of building up my promotional network for my work as a singer-songwriter, and my day job right now is I work for a CBD company. So if CBD, nurse grown organic, great stuff. But other than that, we'll find time to do the great reveal of my artist self, and
wonderful.
Moment for that.
Well, it was a pleasure, and everybody look for the future coming out. Kathryn Blume, she is going to be knocking our socks off with a bowl, maybe.
I will say my Facebook, Instagram are Blume Tunes.
Say it again.
So if you
Blume Tunes?
Blume Tunes, yeah.
Okay, cool. People know. Perfect. Do you put the @ sign in front of that for people to be able to access it? Okay, so @ Blume Tunes. Okay, everybody, you heard that, @ Blume Tunes. So Thanks everybody for tuning in. Thank you very much for joining us, Kathryn. And then if everybody wants to, I'll be putting the audio up on my Podbean channel. The video will go up on my YouTube channel. It's already there live right now. If you want to have more information, you guys can go to my website, mishasafran.com, mishasafran.com. Actually, I looked up Misha Safran with an O, and it was an amazing artist. So if you go to Misha Safran, Safron, it's not me, but it's an incredible artist. So my family was like, why do you say saffron? It's saffron, but it's actually saffran. Anyways, you guys know where to find me. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. And I hope everybody has a fabulous, joyful day. Don't forget, ain't no bad day for us. As long as we can find one good moment, it's a good day with maybe some bad moments in it. Take good care, everybody. Thank you. We wave goodbye.